What amazing times we live in! I told you all this is when the real fun begins. Sorry for being so quiet, the news hasn't stopped being crazy and exploding, it's just everyone else has been covering it all so well, working hard in Trump's new salt mine industry he's powering the internet with. I missed out on New Year's celebration, having been out of town working for a bit as well, which meant I needed to catch up on what I missed, internet time and all that. Not going to miss the inauguration though. Even though the shadow government tried every dirty trick in the book, except assassination, before and after the election to stop Trump, he strided through it all and has been 100% certified as the next president of the United States, and is well on his way to making Equestria great again! So here's something to make a video on in the meantime of another corporate media organization to cover that I haven't seen talked about, and I only like to make videos that others haven't already made, whose words physically reach me all the way over here in Canada on an island, the Globe and Mail. So here I am, being a lowly worker drone in an unfamiliar city, not having access to the internet or having time to do any research into any news, and all we had is the stupid box and the newspaper. I think that was the first time I actually really read the newspaper to get my news. But of course, as we all know, all these corporate media outlets, the old media, are fake New World Order news, as opposed to this handy list of new media, sites that have been identified as trying to bring truth to people, containing hundreds of different groups that aren't all owned by the same criminal cabals, among which are some sites I like to get my news from. To trigger the liberal progressives, for instance, there's InfoWars, one of the few media outlets that knew Trump was going to win in a crushing landslide victory that he did. I go there for breaking political news analysis. And to trigger the conservatives, there's Natural News, a science-based natural health advocacy organization led by activist-turned-scientist Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. I'm subscribed to them for the latest findings in good food health and what things have been recently discovered to be poisoned or just bad food health. And to replace the censorship-filled social media networks like Facebook and YouTube with ones that aren't censored, there's Minds.com and Vid.me. And another great information news site that isn't in the list yet, but did make the top of the corporate media's fake news site list, is geoengineeringwatch.org. For all your global weather control and biosphere collapse news and updates. Let's pop in and see what they got on there, shall we?
20 minutes later.
My life is ruined!
Okay, enough of all that. Let's get into the video, where we'll be looking at the Globe and Mail's 2016 Year in Review editorial. Of all the assumptions Canadians make about life in Canada, perhaps the most unspoken one is that our liberal democracy and its institutions that serve it are here to stay. There are few of us who worry that our parliaments, our courts, our civil liberties, our free media, and our voting rights might disappear. They are too well established, we tell ourselves. And yet we should worry. Shit! Starting off as if to suggest a second Adolf Hitler has risen to power somewhere in the world, eh? In 2016, liberal democracy was under threat in countries that were thought to represent its pinnacle. Faggot. From Europe to the United States, and yes, Canada too, the institutions that perpetuate our way of life are being rubbished by populist, racist, and autocrats who would like nothing more than to see the end of all governing systems that stand between them and unfettered power. There it is! Literally Hitler faggot! Side story, for my New Year's event, I did go to eat dinner at a relative's friend's place. It was the biggest and fanciest house I had ever been in, and we got talking politics, which revealed that the wife said she thinks Donald Trump is literally Hitler. So while the rest of the internet was having a mega time being the deplorables you all are, deprogramming all the psychological warfare that the shadow government is desperately trying to reinstall control over all of you with its current iteration of fake news.
Can you state categorically...
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect, that's not appropriate.
Which I told you all can't work anymore, and it has already failed. Great job, by the way. Because the more they try to force it now, the faster it will wear off. Watch everything they will continue to do in the future will backfire so long as people like you and me keep spearheading our spreading of knowledge of truth. I was busy eating physical food in real life next to a literally Hitler person. I have confirmed for myself that these people do exist in real life. They were nice people though, and I don't think they were supporters of the cunt either. But they also didn't think that the cunt's declared policy on Syria would have caused World War III, which it absolutely would have. I of course also kept mentioning my video on the election for them to watch so they could be properly informed on how that's basically the exact opposite of what just happened in reality. But man, is it ever hard to get even the people you're talking to their faces to inform themselves on the reality around them. Anyways, that's my New Year's story. Back to the propaganda. The most obvious example is, of course, the rise of Donald Trump. The next American president attacks the pillars of his country's liberal constitutional democracy with abandon. Hey, remember me mentioning earlier about the dirty tricks? It went something like this. First, we have got to federalize the election so we can keep it safe. Then, everyone watches the DNC rig the election and steal it from Bernie Sanders. Then they say, our elections are perfect and not federalized and therefore cannot be rigged in any way.
Of course the elections will not be rigged. What does that mean?
Fucking magnets, how do they work?
The Russians are hacking! The Russians are hacking!
The Russians hack our systems. The Russians hack our systems.
Russia even hacked into the Democratic National Committee. 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 Russia even hacked into the Democratic National Committee.
The Russians hack our systems. 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 The Russians hack.
Oh, phew! Well, that's a relief. Trump says he won't accept the results of the election we've been rigging. He hates our constitutional democracy. But when he goes low, we go high, and will promise a peaceful transition of power. Trump wins. No, guys, listen, we're not questioning the integrity of the election. We're just gonna question the integrity of the election by demanding recounts in all the states that we thought we stole. I mean, that Trump shouldn't have won. Trump gets more votes and the cunt loses votes. Fuck, no, listen, hey, no, I said listen here, you little shits. You, fucking Electoral College peasants, you have a duty to vote for who we say you are to vote for, understand? Electoral College defects even more votes from the cunt. Motherfuckers! Congress, we own you, remember? Do as we say! Block Trump! Congress, nope, certifies Trump. You double nigger! And then they illegally federalize the election without Congress when they have no power to do so, only being a week away from a new administration taking over, and will try to indict Trump with fake evidence and or riot for martial law next after the inauguration. So much for your elections not being federalized so they can't be rigged, eh, enemy insurgent?
The federal government doesn't run the election process. What does that mean?
Sorry, I needed to have some fun too. What were we talking about? Oh right, the attacks on constitutional democracy. Oh hey, did anyone else pay attention to the result of that multi-year investigation into Obama's birth certificate that recently proved Obama's birth certificate is a fake? Again? Remember when I posted a video about that years ago? Remember when a foreign enemy infiltrated the United States and became president under the alias of Barack Hussein Obama and completely undermined the very foundation of the constitutional constitutional republic of the United States of America? Oh no, that's right, you didn't hear any of that from the Globe and Mail because they were too busy calling Donald Trump a racist. InfoWars reported on it though. He portrays government, shadow government, as a negative force and refers to it as them. Judges are biased against him, he whines. No, you liar, the argument was a conflict of interest, not a bias against Trump. He gives oxygen to white supremacists, except he disavows them, fucking retards, and endorses political violence. Trump should sue you for that statement. You fucking liars! He says the voting system is rigged, proven on many fronts, while refusing to even entertain the possibility that the Kremlin, a historical grandmaster of election rigging, might have influenced the US election. No, he denies your allegations of him taking orders from Putin, you spastic. He calls the free press a conspiracy against him. It's admitted in the WikiLeaks, you mongoloid! He does not tolerate protesters. The audacity you have to say that in the wake of the George Soros-funded riots across the country. And in the wake of his election, it appeared to be news to him that the US Constitution protects the right to peaceful protest. You're functionally retarded. Did he allow the peaceful protesters to protest or not? We know he did, so why did you write a self-contradiction like that? Quick thought. Notice how the word peaceful is missing from the previous line. I wonder if they're occultly referring to the Boston violent rioters, which Trump did address in the 60-minute interview where he told them not to be afraid. Maybe they should have been afraid of the riot police moving in and actually doing their jobs of quelling the violence instead of raiding people's houses, flashbanging their babies, and shooting their dogs. Who knows? Moving on. Finally, he divides people based on race and religion instead of bringing people together in equality before the law.
I pledge to every citizen of our land that I will be president for all Americans, and this is so important to me. For those who have chosen not to support me in the past, of which there were a few people, I'm reaching out to you for your guidance and your help so that we can work together and unify our great country.
Not sure if living in 1984 or not. That goes against the most fundamental value of a liberal society, which conservatives use to defend. Mr. Trump defines a democracy as an election he wins. No, he hasn't. Stop lying! But we all know you just can't help yourself, can you? And we're not even halfway through this. If Trump ends up suing your stupid ass out of existence, I would like some of the spoils, please. The free press is media that exalts him. Rare donkeyless! We all know the only truly free press is media that exalts Clinton. Justice is a court decision that favors his interest. Us is anyone who cheers for him. Yeah, what else you got? But Mr. Trump, even as he dominates the current news cycle, is only one expression of a long incubating virus. The president-elect has made flesh the loss of faith that many Americans have in a system that, among its other failings, celebrates the buying and selling of its U.S. politicians by special interest groups. He wants to restrict domestic lobbyists and ban foreign ones from Washington. You nigger! If parts of the edifice are rotten, more and more voters on both the extreme right and the extreme left ask, why not blow the whole thing up? The consequences of this mindset are devastating. In June, a group of researchers published The Dangers of Deconsolidation, a paper in which they pointed to troubling evidence of a Western world losing faith in liberal democracy. Let's just keep ignoring the fact that the United States is a con rep. Among their most shocking findings, a survey that showed that the percentage of well-to-do Americans who support military rule has jumped from 5% in the 1990s to 16% today, and another that shows that a growing number of Americans and Europeans born after 1980 no longer feel that it is essential to live in a country that is governed democratically. That's right, because we don't want to be ruled at all. We want to be free. In Europe, that growing distrust of all things government. You should have done your fucking job on exposing and reporting on the shadow government. Go fuck yourself. Cumulated with the vote by Britain to leave the European Union. It will be catastrophic if these same sentiments continue to expand. That's a fact! European countries are battling a rise in jihad and government corruption that's bringing it in. Right-wing populism parties that trade in racism. Everyone I don't like is a white nationalist. And anti-immigration. The Syrian refugee crisis has only added to the tensions. If only the majority of the migrants were actually from Syria! You delusional fuckwit! In the Philippines, the new president encourages vigilantes to murder drug dealers and boasts of having killed a few himself. Turkey's democracy has been perverted into a dictatorship by President for life, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, with thousands of people jailed on baseless charges and the media silenced, and Russia and its imitators run strongman regimes with servile judges and Potemkin elections. Who wants to bet they have as much evidence of Russia hacking their own elections as they do of Russians hacking the US elections? Authoritarianism, where government is above the people and above the law, rather than the reverse, is suddenly in the ascendance. No, you and the establishment you support are the authoritarians, bitch. China, a centralized dictatorship run by a single party, has taken note of what is happening. Its propaganda machine has seized on the election of Mr. Trump as proof that its people should not aspire to the failed so-called freedoms of democracy. The American political system that was once their greatest pride has constantly proven powerless to restrain the despicable conduct of incompetent politicians, writes a researcher at one of China's state-run think tanks. Mr. Trump could not have put it better himself. The allure of a strongman who can fix all the problems of a nation has not been this strong in decades. Polls show a third of Mr. Trump's Republican voters approve of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. These are frightening times, and no one should look away. But the fake polls you and the rest of the corporate media kept putting out showing the country had an allure of a strong woman, stronger together, who is a psychopathic war criminal, makes for happy-go-lucky peaceful times with our angel goddess, right? Right?
Wrong!
Canadians, especially, must not take their constitutional democracy for granted. We have problems too. Low voter turnout, populist politicians... Who blame an unnamed elite, they are named, for the destruction of Canadian values, a trend towards centralization of power in the offices of the Prime Minister and the Premiers. Are you guys talking about Elizabeth May here? Canada, like all countries run by imperfect human beings, suffers from politicians who are sold out to the New World Order. Kind of like you! Sometimes break promises, mismanage funds, accept donations from lobbyists, and evade and lie. But we also have politicians, often the same ones, who have taken measures to reinforce liberal democracy. Most provinces and federal governments have adopted strict rules to reduce the influence of money in politics. Oh look, more lies! Hey, didn't you just berate unnamed politicians for lying? Now we can add hypocrite to the list of reasons why you're a pile of shit and should kill yourself. On this and other points, Canada is already well ahead of the US. I find that typically Canada is a couple years behind politically, culturally to the US, but I'm hoping I'm able to catch us up to the waves of populist uprisings that's happening around the globe right now. Our electoral maps are drawn up by independent commissions. In the US, they are playthings to the state politicians. Our judges are not perfect, but they are truly independent, whereas in many US states they are elected. We also now have, in the form of Mr. Trump, a stark reminder of why liberal democratic values are so important to defend, and of the ways in which they can be diminished. How has Trump starkly reminded you of how liberal democratic values have been diminished? I mean, what things did he actually say, not what labels did you put on the things he said? And if your answer is him winning the election, then you're being blatant hypocrites again to suggest that democracy has been diminished because someone you didn't want to get elected got elected. Choke on my still permanently erect 2-foot-long horse cock, you cucks! If nothing else positive comes out of 2016, let us at least find a new determination. You do not get to use that word ever! Do you hear me?